This is Free Zone Radio.
From Free Zone Radio, I'm Jason Crockett, and this is Second Stage. This is our third week of July 2026, celebrating America's 250th on the stage, and we're rewinding to 1985 and Tony Kushner's groundbreaking play Angels in America, Part 1, Millennium Approaches. After the counterculture movement of the 60s and the failed Vietnam intervention of the 70s, America was in a dark place, looking to feel good about itself again. The 1980s seemed to have achieved that with pop culture hits like Top Gun, Cocktail, Dirty Dancing, and The Goonies, and with endless hours of rad music television on MTV, and with neon colors and big hair and big synth, and with arcades and Rubik's Cube and the Nintendo, and from the White House with back-to-back elections for Ronald Reagan. But Kushner's play pulls the rose-colored glasses off our eyes for a couple hours, and it considers a not-so-jubilant morning again in America through the lives of two parallel couples. One is the gay couple of Lewis and Pryor, who's just found out that he's showing symptoms of the new phantom menace of the time, AIDS. The other is a Mormon couple, Joe Pitt and his Valium-addicted wife, Harper. Now, although the two couples may seem at opposite ends of the political, religious, and sexual spectrum, people are people, and we're all a lot more connected than we realize. Kushner's characters exist in an America that seems to be a shining city on a hill, but it's all built on lies. Lewis says that he loves Pryor, but now when Pryor needs him most, Lewis can't take the sickness and abandons him. And our clean-cut Reaganite lawyer, Joe, discovers he can't save his wife from her own self-destruction, and that his father never loved him at all, and that his role model, the menacing Roy Cohn, might just be the devil. Kushner's characters claim there are no angels in America. Except, we hear voices, and we feel these rumblings, and we see bizarre visions of an incipient, semi-divine revelation coming. Now, whether these apparitions are hallucinated and what these annunciations pretend for us is a matter to be chewed on after the show, which is exactly what we did. With summer break rapidly drawing toward a close, I sat down for coffee and good stuff again at our local shop, Meg's Bread, here with my buddy Drew Haston and my mentor, Mark Creter from Tennessee Tech Theater. Mark has had the unique experience of putting on the only full production in Middle Tennessee to date that we know of Angels in America. So we get to hear from him this wisdom on Kushner, his work, and what it suggests about the American experience.
It's just incredible. It really is incredible.
So I was watching the HBO version of it recently.
Right.
And
which is great.
Which performance do you prefer? The HBO one? Do you prefer like the National Theater with Andrew Garfield? Like, is there one that you would be like, that's a really good one, I would stick with that one?
I think they're all good. It's interesting to watch. Al Pacino was a very good Roy Cohn, but you watch clips of the actor Ron Liebman, who I think originated the role, and he's just doing some really cool stuff. In a way, it was like, okay, Al. And again, no shade, Al, one of our truly great American actors of all time.
Right.
It's the funny thing about it is, because the only time I've seen it performed live is the show I directed. So, of course, I see my actors. When I'm reading it, I'm seeing my actors, all of whom, and that was the other thing that kind of struck me about reading the play or rereading the first part was I still can't quite fathom the amount of in a nod to the play, the amount of chutzpah it took on my part to decide not just to direct Angels in America Part 1 in a semester, but to decide we were going to do both plays. And I was going to put a cast together in, the end of November, and we would stay together until the beginning of the following May.
Impossible to imagine that. That's crazy.
It was absolutely, and so I think it was. I was trying to remember. I think it was either 2007 or 2005. I can't remember exactly, but it kind of blows my mind to think that, and I don't honestly remember having much of a doubt that we could pull it off.
That's crazy.
And, to have filled the Playhouse, and a lot of it, I will give total credit to Kushner, who says in the opening of this script, it's all right if the strings appear. It should be magical, but it's okay if we see how you do it.
That's awesome.
And it was really it was like getting thumbs up from the author. It's okay. Like, you have a small theater, and I hate to use the word small for the Playhouse, but you have an intimate theater, and you're going to use every square inch of the stage, which we did. And, I'll always give major props to Colin Forsyth, who was my TD at the time, who built this incredible set. And, and then when we needed more set for Part 2, he built that too, and just built onto what we had. I mean, it never should have worked, and yet I think it was one of the most important things I ever did in my time running the Playhouse. And I've had so many people tell me, seeing that show in Cookeville, Tennessee, on a tech campus, they felt seen. It felt like their story was being told. And it was just incredible. And it was the most incredible cast that just sort of, it was like one of those moments where I just had the people to make it happen.
I've saved this play for season 2 to talk about. So later in the semester, he and I and some others are going to dig deep into it. But I really did want to select it for my month of America in July, because I wanted to look at all these different angles of the American experience. And how do you not pick this play for an angle of the American experience?
I really think it. I mean, it was written right at the end of that from the 20th to the 21st century. But it really is one of the single most important modern plays. I mean, hands down. It's just, it captures so much about America. Yeah. And of course, even not realizing what is going to ultimately happen to the world starting in 2016. To think about having a character like Roy Cohn, who was such an important influence on this monster that runs us now.
Yes.
And the way that he was presented in the play is fascinating. I mean, he is a fascinating literary character who was a real monstrous human being.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Reading back through it now in 2026, boy, there's so many lines, so many passages, so many Roy Cohn characterizations that I thought, wow, your chickens really have come home to roost, haven't they? Wow. Yeah. It's like all over again, or it's happening now.
It is happening now, yeah.
You did this in 2007, right?
I think that was the year that we did it.
So why Angels in America? Were you thinking why do we got to do this play now? Why does Cookeville? Why does America? Why this play now?
It was Kurt Eisen, who we've talked about before, who was the among other things, Eugene O'Neill Scholar on campus. He taught the American dramatic American literature, modern American drama class. And this was one of the plays that he had the students read. And he was the one that suggested we have the freshman in Intro to Theater, which I still think, I don't know that I could do that now. I think I would be afraid in some ways in the world that we live in now, where everything is considered, divisive, in some ways, I don't want to say I'd be afraid. I wouldn't. I mean, I have the students read the Christians, and I do have them read some stuff that's got some edge to it. But this play has a lot of hardcore sexuality in it.
Yeah.
It calls for nudity, which we wrestled with in trying to do the show. But I think in 2007, I was so moved. I was so moved by the play. I just thought it was kind of a perfect play. And I think obviously by that point I had read part 2, so I knew what I was getting into. And it just seemed to me there was a completest part of my personality. I think I couldn't wrap my head around that we were only going to do part 1 and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I just felt like we've got to tell the whole story. Even though, by all rights, we shouldn't have. we shouldn't have been able to. Plus, it was that was one of my favorite seasons so that was a season that we started in the fall. I had a guest director come in, Charles Long, directed Our Town, which was our fall production. And then in the spring, we did both parts of Angels in America. I mean, what a season. What an insane season, with many of the people who worked on Our Town then taking central roles in Angels in America. It's not something that could happen now. I mean, the theater program in many ways has changed to the point where, we had outside actors. We needed outside actors. I mean, Lewis and Pryor were two gentlemen who lived in a queer community that was, 45 minutes, an hour from Cookeville, had heard we were doing this show and came down for the auditions because they couldn't not. They could, and when the guy Jimmy who played Pryor in it, he said I couldn't not be involved in a production of Angels in America in Middle Tennessee. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter that he lived an hour from here. It was like a calling. And I don't think the show would have been as good without the two guys who came down off the mountain to play Pryor and Lewis. I mean, they were phenomenal. And then the rest of the cast were local actors. And my wife Jennifer played the angel.
That's right.
In part 1, but she couldn't commit to doing part 2 because she teaches and she's got a studio to run, and so we traded out, which also production-wise was really interesting because the angel is such an ethereal presence in part 1 and a physical manifestation throughout part 2.
Yeah.
And even the actress that I was able to bring in, an actress who ironically was named Chessie Angel, who played the angel in part 2. I mean, it was just everything kind of fell into place.
It was incipient. She was meant to be.
And I also, for me as a theater director, in answer to your question, I needed this challenge. Like I felt like I need to do this play. And if I'm gonna call myself a director, I've got to do this play. And there was nobody else that was going to tackle something like this in town. Right. And the university, which in many ways was a very different university in 2007,
yeah.
I felt certain that I would have 100% support from the university. And I did at the time. I mean, and a lot of people were not happy about us doing the play. And, we had people walk out every night. And there were 2 or 3 parts in the play where I would say, if they make it through this point, they will probably stay till the end. Or if they make it up to this point, the Central Park scene, if they can make it through that scene, they'll stay to the end. Yeah. And a lot of times, and it was never more than 2 or 3 a night who would just be like, nope, that's it. I've reached my point. Yeah. You'd hear rustling, and then you'd hear the doors swing open and closed. And that's like, oh, well, we lost 2 or 3 people. But I just felt like it was, I had spent, by that point, we had probably taught it. I think Kurt and I only team taught that class twice, I think. because we were expanding the amount of offerings that we did of Intro to Theater, because we were in the process of creating the concentration. I can't remember exactly, I'm old, but it just, by that point, I felt like I knew the play well enough, particularly part one, that we're just going to make it happen. And then I knew enough about part two and the continuation. And when the actors were cast, everybody was cast with the understanding we are going to do both parts of this play, and we're going to do it all in a semester, which is crazy as well. And the only thing that, in retrospect, it's by this point become a lot more vague. I would say my only disappointment was we had talked about doing an epic, both parts back to back, kind of a final thing where we would have remounted part one and done a full 8-hour performance of both parts. But by the time the end of April rolled around, we were all exhausted, and it was I think everybody felt like it was time to close.
A literal day of theater. It would have been a literal work day of theater.
It would have been a full day. And a lot of theaters do offer both parts.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've done it in Atlanta. Of course, they did it in New York.
How many intermissions do you have to give for an 8-hour show?
Well, and I think that they probably built in, dinner break between both parts of the plays, and then, we did part one and part two, but each had 2 intermissions we built into it, and I feel like in retrospect, I think we had one 15-minute intermission and then more of a break, just in case people needed to use the bathroom or anything. Yeah. But I think I'm pretty sure we had 2 intermissions for each show.
What about people who are not familiar with Tony Kushner? You and I agree. This is a great play. This is an amazing play. Like, I think in the future, people will be looking back through American theater and American literature, and this is going to be a big work that they look at. But nowadays, if you go around and ask, I think, the average person, Tony Kushner, a lot of people aren't going to know anything about him. And I know even I was like, what other work should I know by Tony Kushner? What would you tell students? What would you tell listeners? You need to know this about Tony Kushner, his style, his body of work, anything.
Oh, that's a really good question. He's a really interesting guy, and I do think in some ways, I think in some ways the early fame of Angels in America ultimately proved to be a little overwhelming for him in some ways, because his life suddenly became, on the public, it was like all of a sudden people were talking about all the aspects, and he's had complicated, and being an open gay man, and in America you'd think it would be fine, but it's always complicated. And also, I don't know, I think the struggling writer, I think it's in some ways it's overwhelming to go from a struggling playwright to a Pulitzer Prize winning, Tony Award winning playwright. And then, the second play did he took a lot of hits for part two. And, even in part two, in the published part two, there are 2 or 3 scenes in it that he's like, well, I wrote these scenes, but they've never, and this at the time, they'd never actually been produced, because most theaters were like, nah, we're going to cut those. I, of course, stupidly did everything that was in part two, making it, over a 4-hour long performance for audiences. But I was also at that point, in for a penny, in for a pound. We're doing it all. I thought there was something fun. There's a Roy Cohn in Hell scene that's, I think, really funny. I mean, it's quirky and funny, and the actor playing Roy Cohn was like, "I'm down, let's do it." But I'm not sure that it necessarily makes for good theater in the way that part one is just. It's just a perfect play. I mean, and I love that it sets up you have these 2 marriages, essentially marriage. And Lewis and Pryor aren't married. We weren't even really talking about gay marriage at that point, but they are clearly a couple.
Yeah.
And there's problems in the midst of this otherwise happy relationship. Is suddenly Pryor is diagnosed with AIDS, and Lewis can't handle it. And then you've got the mirrored couple of a married Mormon couple who have moved to New York City, and Joe is a lawyer who secretly suspects he may have yearnings that he doesn't know how to process.
Yeah.
And Harper, the wife, is a pill popper. So, it's what a fascinating as a playwright to decide, let's have a Mormon, a homegrown religion.
Yeah.
Counterpoint to, a character who is Jewish but not a practicing Jew, one of the oldest religions, played off against a homegrown religion. It's just fascinating. I mean, it's like, and for Kushner, a Jewish man, to incorporate that, and I mean, it is in many ways kind of the perfect example of a playwright drawing from things in his life, a fascination with Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, as the ghostly image of him slowly fades away on the side of that building on the square. The great American hero that has slowly diminished in time. The
paint peeling and everything.
But at the time that he wrote this play in the 90s, he was still beloved. Everybody talked about the great cowboy, the shining city on the hill, and we were becoming more and more aware of how much nonsense that all was. And it was I mean, in many ways, you can say everything that has gone wrong with this country over the last 20-some years leads back to Reagan. So talk about a playwright with an idea that is going to resonate for years.
Yeah.
So it never surprises me that particularly part one of this play is always in modern contemporary drama anthologies.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you beat this as a play? It's phenomenal.
I struggle to think how.
It's phenomenal.
I remember this being in Kurt's class, and that's where I remember reading it. 20-some years ago as a student who knows nothing. But here I am later, and I picked it up this summer as an English teacher who has been through metaphor and all the structure of a play and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, holy cow, what a great way of balancing two couples that are so different, and yet we're really struggling with the same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing.
Lou is abandoning Pryor because I can't deal with this right now.
Yeah.
And he knows it's awful, and he says, I love you, but really, what is love if you're abandoning Pryor now?
Right.
But Joe also can't help Harper and is abandoning her to her Valium trips. And he's going out dealing with his issues right now. And I thought, holy cow.
And layer into that you've also got Joe and Harper, in a sense, abandoning God.
Yes.
The thing that presumably brought the two of them together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating. And then you've got the devil that is Roy Cohn that is encouraging Joe to abandon his principles for success. And that wonderful speech about men, the importance of older male role models, but there's the subtext of what is the lascivious aspects of Roy Cohn.
Yeah.
It's just a phenomenal play.
We have been through so many archetypal devil figures this summer in what I've looked at. I've never read A Raisin in the Sun before. I don't know how I've gotten this far in my career and never read A Raisin in the Sun.
Oh, my goodness, what a play.
We loved it. He has said it's like his new favorite play, Raisin in the Sun. But here's nice, well-meaning Mr. Lindner who comes by and says, we want to buy you out. And I thought, oh, man, you're the devil.
You're the devil.
Offering them a deal right now. You are the devil.
Yep.
And here's Roy Cohn looking at his young protege, and he even tells him, transgress a little bit. And I thought,
just a
oh
little
my
bit.
God, that's the devil.
Yeah.
He's telling you there are so many laws, find one to break. Boy, you could not get more of a devil figure than Roy Cohn in this play.
I know.
So there's like so many.
He's maybe
great
one of the
devils.
greatest devil figures in dramatic literature.
I get that on the surface, this is a play about numerous gay characters. And just like in Lorraine Hansberry's play, yes, it is a play where it matters to discuss race. But as far as the audience goes, it doesn't have to be a black audience that can only appreciate that.
No.
And for us, it also doesn't have to be a gay audience that appreciates Angels in America.
Right.
Any more
Or
than
a Mormon audience.
Or a Mormon
or
audience.
A Jewish audience. Or
The story of Moses may be a Hebrew story, but everybody can appreciate Moses as a character. And the same thing is true with Pryor and Lewis.
Yeah.
It does not matter. America is America is America, and there's so much to us. So I really appreciated the variety of character, the balance of foils, and the evil in Roy Cohn.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's one of the great characters, and I had the power towards the end when he hallucinates. Maybe that's the other thing I love about it is what are the hallucinations in it? Did Ethel Rosenberg really show up to tell him you're gonna die?
Because there was the 911 call that was dialed. Who did that? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, and I think that was the thing. I think in some ways that was the thing that caught so many theater people off guard was that Kushner. He didn't play by any rules necessarily, and he's not the first playwright to do that. But I think as a modern playwright, he just went for it.
Yeah.
And I mean the whole idea of is there a ghost or is there not? I mean, you can go all the way back to Hamlet. Did Hamlet really see the ghost of his father, or is it in his mind? Shakespeare doesn't tell us. Shakespeare just puts it out there and says, you figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm telling you a ghost has appeared to Hamlet. And so, and so for Kushner to have the ghost or whatever the heck, Ethel Rosenberg, I mean, it's unbelievable. And the writing itself, I mean, that's the other thing, is the speeches in it are phenomenal.
Yes. I have a friend who brought up the Ghost of Hamlet at the end of school semester, and her take on it was that nobody else, like Queen Gertrude, doesn't see the ghost, and some of the others, but Horatio sees it, and the guards see it, and that, okay, well, why can some people see it but not others? And her take on it was that some of us are too guilty, or some of us are unclean, some of us are not worth seeing some of these almost semi-divine messages. And when I was watching through this again yesterday, I thought, oh, some of us are not worthy of hearing that angel coming. Some of us are not. But then it made me think, Pryor feels so awful about himself sometimes, and yet, Pryor, there's something in you that is worth saving at this point. You have a message that you are ready to hear. You may not want it, but there's something in you. And I thought that's also a great thing that translates to audiences. How many times do any of us feel awful about ourselves?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not worth something. Well, actually, there is something worth saving in you. There can be something. But Roy Cohn sees a ghost of a different kind. He never sees the angel. He sees the ghost of guilt.
Yeah.
It's somebody you sent wrongfully to her death.
Yep.
And as soon as she shows up on stage and he goes, oh, God. I remember laughing so hard. I thought, yes, it's Ethel.
Of course it is. And I love that he sets it up with, this is the best thing I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
The best thing I did was send them to the chair. Mm-hmm. And then that, of course, that reveal, which is a turning point for Joe, that he was using his power. Mm-hmm. He was breaking the law to get that woman executed. And that is in many ways for Joe it's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways too, it's funny in this, and I didn't reread Perestroika, but it's interesting how, in some ways, Joe and Lou both don't really get any kind of a redemption.
Right.
It's I mean, at the end we have the mom, who's a fascinating character too. I mean, she only shows up, but that scene where Joe calls his mom on the phone it's so brief, and yet it is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the show. And I will always be. I have a picture. I can picture it in my head because I had a photographer who took a wonderful picture of the actor Evan, who played Joe, on a payphone, and you could see the mom in the distance because the way we staged it. Everybody was always on stage. That was the other thing that was so fascinating about the way the play was set up. And so many too. There's the crossover. That wonderful thing where you've got Harper and Joe falling apart simultaneous with Pryor and Lewis is incredible. I mean, what writing? I'm sure I've listened to some interviews and I've certainly read some things with Kushner, but it would be fascinating to kind of know exactly that moment when he thought, I'm going for it with this scene.
Yeah.
I think it'll work. It was one of the hardest things for actors. I mean, staging that, where they're literally the two confrontations are going on simultaneously. Sometimes just two lines at a time. It's Joe and Harper, and and it's all on stage, and it's all happening simultaneously. Yeah, it's crazy.
This is a great ensemble cast. And part of me wants to say there's a lot of protagonists to this story because, I mean, Joe's a protagonist. He's struggling against stuff. He wants to achieve something. But Pryor's a protagonist, and Lou is a protagonist, and even Harper is trying to escape into something that she's wanting.
Yeah.
We get a lot of protagonists. Do we get an antagonist to this play? Because my first thing was, it's Roy Cohn. No, it's not Roy Cohn. In a way, Cohn is like a deceiver, but he's not really the antagonist of everything.
No.
Do we have an antagonist?
It's a really good question. And it may be the antagonist in the play is their faith. It's throwing them both. It's certainly with Harper and Joe.
Yeah.
It's the fly in the ointment for them. And Harper has pretty much moved on from it, although she references it all the time. Mormons can have sex. Mormons can.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. Yeah. It's. And Belize is a fascinating character who's, in many ways kind of a side character, and yet that scene with Lewis is so essential. The sweetness of this between him and Pryor, it's really interesting. That's a really good question.
Well, that's a good take, too, to think, if the antagonist keeps our people from getting what they want, then who or what is keeping us? And is it a naive kind of faith in blank? And faith doesn't even have to be religious. Joe has a Mormon faith, but he's also got a faith in America.
Yeah.
He's got a faith in his Reaganism. He's got a faith in his idol, Roy Cohn. Boy, you talk about...
He's a Roy boy. He's an uncommitted Roy boy.
Yeah.
What an expression.
Hitching yourself to some awful, awful star. Man.
Yeah.
But then how many times have we hitched ourselves to a star only to find out later, you're not who I thought you were. Ugh, is this really what I believe? I thought you were the hero here. How many times? I think part of maturing and growing up is stripping those layers away and realizing maybe I don't really believe this. Maybe this is not what I thought I was getting into. Harper and her belief in her husband, or I don't know, her belief in reality, her belief in something. And Oh, boy, you bring up the part where Lewis and Belize are in the coffee shop talking. I not only reread that, but I rewatched that part again this morning, and I was like, oh, Jason Crockett, you schmuck. How many times have you gone off on a tangent about the state of things?
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody else is like Belize sitting on the other side of the table like, could you just shut up, Jason?
How can I get out of here? How can I subtly slip away and let him keep talking and he won't notice I've gone?
Oh, man. Part of me also wondered, like, just on my reread of it, I felt like there are things that can be redeemable about Joe, but he doesn't find redemption yet. There's things that are redeemable about Pryor. I don't know what I feel about Lewis as a character. He is so weak in abandoning Pryor right now. Part of me is just a person in the audience can't get past that. Like, how do you?
I know, but in a sense too, yes. But I love that he is honest about it. Yeah. And what it comes down to is I don't like the icky stuff.
Yeah.
And it puts me off, and I don't want to have to deal with, the bodily fluids and the illness, and it ooks me out. Yeah. And I find that kind of, there's a certain sad honesty to that it's just, he can't wrap his head around it. And so his only feeling is, I just have to put distance between myself and this person who I profess to love. But that, in a sense, what's that old, it's the old saying, I didn't sign up for this. How many people say that? I didn't sign on for this. Yeah. And in a sense, that's what he's feeling, is like, this is not what I signed up for.
Holy cow, what if that's like an underlying subtext for all of this? Joe looking at Roy Cohn, wait, I didn't sign on for this. Or looking at your ideal vision of Reagan America, I didn't sign on for this. Maybe Harper looking at her husband, I didn't sign on for this. Maybe that's a realization for a lot of our characters.
Well, and look at it this way, too. You think about it, and I think this is particularly true where men are concerned. And I think it's interesting that Kushner doesn't reveal until well into the play that Joe's father didn't love him. The mother just says it. So your father didn't love you. Get over it.
Yeah.
But you think about how many broken men are out there, and they were broken by their fathers. And so they spend their lives looking for a male role model, whether it's Reagan, whether it's Roy Cohn. Right now, dealing with a president who is broken and was broken by definitely his father, who is a guy who has crafted this sense of machismo out of nonsense and nothing. I mean, it really is. It's frightening what a prophet Tony Kushner. Yeah. And I'm sure he wouldn't claim that at all. But it's really is like that moment when you find out that Joe didn't have a loving male role model. His mom's clearly a kind of a buster. She flies to the middle of Brooklyn or the Bronx, wherever she ends up, on the street. I mean, come on, that's a tough gal. But that is something interesting too. That her attitude when Joe calls is, in a sense, get over it.
Yeah. That really hurt. I was watching that part of it last night with my wife in the room, and for him to come out to his mom on the telephone, and you're realizing, oh man, as a human being, this is one of the most vulnerable parts in your life right now. And for him to open up and her to just look at him through the phone and say, what an awful, terrible way to realize your father didn't love you. And it's like, Mom, holy cow. A, that was the most hurtful thing I could imagine you saying. And B, you don't even want to address what I just confessed to you right now. You just want to make it about something else.
Something else. And then to layer into that, I mean, at least we think of with our phones, there's at least something vaguely personal about it. At least it's my phone. But this was in the days of payphones. He is standing on a street corner on a payphone having this conversation. A conversation that's probably could potentially be interrupted by, you need to put another quarter in. There's a whole generation of people that don't understand. Yeah. There was a time when you had to put a pile of coins on and keep plugging quarters into the payphone to keep a conversation going.
Yes. This play, I appreciate that it's a modern play about I don't want to say a subculture, but an angle of America that doesn't get represented enough, maybe an underrepresented, not publicized. What do you want to call it? Like how it's not mainstream America necessarily. Right. But as somebody who loves horror stories and the supernatural, I love that my guy Tony Kushner wove in these details of, is that really the ghost? Or hearing the rumblings, the voices of this, seeing the ghost of your ancestors.
Is it really? Oh, and the ancestors. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the ancestors. It's truly one of the most fun things in the play, and certainly for the actors. The actor who plays Joe is the second prior that comes in, and then the actor who plays Roy Cohn is the oldest prior. And for those two actors to get to kind of shed those characters and then be these kind of wacky ancestors is such a fun addition to the play. Yeah. But I also love that it's all things that are in Prior. Are they in Prior's head? Is this really happening? Is this the disease? Is it the medicine he's on? Is it... same thing with the angel, really. Yeah. And that's one of the things that makes part two, I think he grounds them. Suddenly the supernatural becomes a little more reality in a way that maybe doesn't work quite as well as when you're not 100% sure. Yeah.
But what an awesome way to end part one with suddenly the eruption of an angel and this annunciation, this revelation. Revelation was a word that kept coming up for me in rereading this, revealing who you really are to somebody, but also having the scales lifted from your own eyes and seeing what other people are really like around you, the revelation of a message. Like it just kept coming up. That there's something revealing about America. Yeah. And I get that, I lived through the year 2000. I remember what Y2K was like. I remember how everybody was hyped about 1999 and the clock's counting down. I think that we as human beings always look to the end of a century. We look to the end of that whatever cycle and think, oh no, the end of something's also the beginning of something. There's a great transition. So I remember that, but I think he's also looking at the transition of one America into something else. Yeah. We're looking at the end of, idealism from the 80s that's maybe not so ideal and going to be darkened through the 90s and into whatever. Even the ghost of one of the priors looks and is like, ugh, the 20th century, how old the world has gotten. Right. What is this transition, this revelation into what we're going to become?
Well, and it's fascinating to think too. So I'm older than you are. So I remember, my introduction, in many ways, my introduction to American politics as a teenager was Watergate. And so suddenly, I'm just barely aware of what's going on politically in the world. And I'm told that the president can be a crook and and can do things, and so I do remember that sense of that feeling of hopelessness that my parents had, that this was not what we were expecting, the turn. And, maybe we do need, a Gerald Ford to come along and just say, hey, we're just, we're just going to move on from it. Probably the worst thing that ever happened was that Nixon didn't go to prison. And yet you can kind of see it, that I think back to that time. And again, I was only in my teens. I was very young. But that sense that the country wanted to move on from Watergate and from Vietnam and from, how dark all of that got. And maybe this peanut farmer from Georgia is going to be the thing that we need. No, how about this former actor from Hollywood? I mean, we were just kept grappling for something. And it's funny to read that scene with the buddy of Roy and Joe when they're in the nightclub together, and he's laying out how the Republicans are going to take over everything, and they're going to hold on to everything through that it's all through 2000. Mm-hmm. So it's positing a time where a Bill Clinton doesn't come along and screw it up for them, by being a glimmer of hope for the left,
right?
Or that, Bush is going to turn out to be, Bush 1 is going to turn out to be as bad a president as he was. It was just, and so I love that he, in that scene, that was the fantasy in the 80s, that now we've got Reagan in there and it's just it. We're a supermajority forever.
But here I am in 2026, Tennessee, that is redistricting Memphis to put a lock on something. And I'm living in a country that talks about Project 2025 laying out a roadmap in which an administration just made a speech that not even the major networks would carry because they know this is lunacy. You're already saying, the elections that are coming up are already rigged. How can they possibly be rigged when you say that you're going to you're rigging this?
Yeah.
So it's like when I read that, I thought, oh man, it's the same thing. It's going to it's just happening here right now too.
Yeah. And you see the Roy Cohn kind of character who taught this man, if you just keep saying something often enough, people will eventually believe it, or they'll at least stop fighting you and just go, okay, all right, that's the reality.
Yeah. Well, one of the lines from the play is that they shout, "A great work, a great lie that we turn to truth, a great error that we correct." Maybe this play is a step.
Yeah.
Maybe a step toward doing that.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, I kept having students read it for a number of years after Kurt and I stopped teaching the class together. Yeah. And I hit a point where I realized the students couldn't get past some of the raunchiness in the show. They couldn't get past some of the language in the show. It was not going to allow them to see the brilliance in the play because they couldn't get over their hang-ups with it, or feeling like I had exposed them to something that they shouldn't be exposed to.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate in so many ways, but and I had students push back all the time with just why.
Yeah.
So
the end of a thing can be scary. We're all afraid of death. Everybody's afraid of the end of a cycle. Everybody's afraid of the end of an era or whatever. But this play, and I think a lot of our stories also underscore that truth that it's not coming completely to an end. Every end of a cycle is the start of something new. So while we are terrified of the end of one thing, there's hope that something new is right around the corner, and that can be wonderful. What do the ghosts keep saying? Incipient candle, lure, phosphor. That there could be something wonderful right around the corner that I know is equally terrifying, but that's also the new, that's the unknown. So I'm holding out hope. I'm holding out hope that there are angels in America.
Yeah, I am too. And I have a very hard time not falling down the well of despair. Yeah. But I am holding out hope as well.
I appreciate you coming by one more time.
Oh man,
I appreciate
this was
it.
great, and what a significantly important play.
I agree.
I am looking forward to the next time I teach the contemporary drama class again, because I do love teaching this play, particularly with older students who are a little more mature and can kind of handle it.
Well, that was another thing that I thought too. I know that we were 21 or something like that, maybe 20, when I was in Kurt's class, and okay, so there's plenty of things that maybe you read when you're in high school but mean completely different. You read Gatsby when you're in high school.
Sure.
Okay, you can get Gatsby. But as a 30-year-old man who's thinking back on what if I could have, Gatsby's a whole different story. And maybe you can read this and watch it when you're 20, but when you're 46 and you've been through stuff, or 72 or whatever, like it's just a different thing when you are in a different stage of life. And yet, I saw this play referenced on the AP exam. And I'm thinking, so somewhere in the country, there's somebody who is like, I can imagine AP Lit seniors having been exposed to Angels in America. Maybe there's a corner out there.
Yeah, maybe so. I want to think so. I mean, I really do. I as many times as I've told students, you just have to go with it. Yes, there are things in here that are going to make you uncomfortable. Good theater should make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It should make you uncomfortable. But I even remember, and this was 20 years ago, talking with a colleague at MTSU who couldn't believe we'd done a play like How I Learned to Drive and got away with it. Like we'd gotten away with something. And then the very next year they did Streetcar. And it wasn't even and I said, well, Streetcar, it's like the rape and that's heavy duty stuff. Yeah, it not the same. It was just, so I don't know. I mean, the world is complicated.
Maybe we're like the ghosts of Pryor, who are like talking to Pryor in America right now, telling you, good things are coming, good things are coming.
Good things are coming. I do love that idea. I'll be that. I'll be the ghost of America saying good things are coming.
This is awesome. Second Stage is a Free Zone Radio production, produced here in Sparta, Tennessee. What actually is Free Zone Radio? A group of content creators, teachers, readers, and classroom experts who make shows for our students, for other educators, and for anyone who likes a good read. If you enjoyed what you hear, please be sure to click like on this episode and subscribe to the show to follow for more. If you have ideas for us, send them to freezoneradiopodcasts@gmail.com. That's freezoneradiopodcasts, plural, @gmail.com. And be sure to listen to our other show, With Honors, and our brother podcast, A Dead Man's Books. All of them available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to great content.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew, and I want to talk to you about my show, A Dead Man's Books. The show was created with the mindset of whenever I pass away, as morbidly as that sounds, that my children would inherit my books, and of all the things that I'm going to pass down to them, I think that that's the one thing that I want them to make sure that they keep and go through on their own time, but I want to be there next to them whenever they read these things. And so I created a podcast so that they could go back and listen to me and my friends and other people as we read through these books and what we had to think about it. But it's grown to so much more. We've got authors we interview. We talk about everyday life. We talk about how literature connects to life. All of those things in one place. And now we want you to come along with us and join us. This is a podcast not just for my kids, but for everyone who loves to read, everyone who loves a good story, everyone who's a parent, everyone who's a teacher, everyone who just enjoys literature. This is a place to come. So come join us every Monday on A Dead Man's Books.